So Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me, bro.
So for those who don't know your story, could you summarize who you are and a basic Cliff Notes version of what your story is?
Sure. Yeah. My name is Adam Vibe Gunton. I'm the founder of Recovered on Purpose. Just over 6.5 years ago, I was homeless, 148 pounds and addicted to drugs. And now I'm not. I'm recovered, and I published a book that became a bestseller. Then I started coaching and training other people in recovery how to write and publish books. And that turned into Recovered on Purpose, where we basically use the stories of people in recovery to reach those that are still suffering and help them be inspired to find recovery.
So where did this all start for you?
Well, I would say that it all started, when I was younger and was introduced to drugs. I didn't really understand what I was doing. Didn't understand like the implications of the future, and didn't understand that being introduced to cocaine at 12 years old by someone who was much older than me was not really great for my future outlook. Because during the time I was like the home run derby hitter of the Little League World Series. I was on a state championship football team every year. We won nationals once. I went to Columbine High School and, had this great athletic career growing up, but had this, hidden drug habit that I didn't see how bad it was getting, right? I wasn't able to recognize because I was the one that was in it, And then on September 28th, 2008, I've been out drinking and partying like most nights my freshman year of college, when I woke up to my phone ringing and vibrating down by my leg. And I swam through the soft sheets to find my hard phone with the bright screen that read 4:47 a.m. And my best friend Chucker was calling me. And I remember having the conscious choice that I could either answer the phone like I always do with, "Hey, what's up, Chuck?" Or I could answer the way I was feeling with, "Hello." And in my still drunken state, I chose the latter, to which a soft voice replied, "Hey, what's up? Why are you calling me this late?" "I was just calling to say hi." "Don't call me this late again." And I hung up on him, and he shot himself. And for nearly a decade after that experience, I was unable to share that phone call with anyone, as I bottled it down deeper and deeper with drugs and alcohol. Drugs and alcohol were no longer a way to party and have fun. Drugs and alcohol had become my solution to life, my solution to the way that I felt when I was having a hard time. I was using drugs, and I was having a good time. I was using drugs, and they just became life more than a weekend type thing. And this led me to, I was prescribed 250 milligrams of Oxycontin a day when I was like 20 years old. And, when that ran out, I went into heroin. And, I always had this heart to serve people. Like even during my addiction, I was, doing personal development and all this kind of stuff, which has no integrity, because I would win an award for this leadership program and then leave right away and go get heroin on the streets. So there wasn't a lot of integrity in it, but I always had this heart that I wanted to serve, and once I got to a point where I was completely broken, I'm 220 pounds right now, and I've got like 13% body fat, and I was 148 pounds at the end. So I was like real close to death. And it took that much for me to finally be able to let go of everything. And once I actually found that freedom from addiction that a lot of people don't ever find, that real freedom where I don't want or desire or crave drugs anymore or alcohol. Once I actually felt that freedom, I felt like it was my duty, my responsibility, and my purpose to help others find it. So where did it all start? I'd say it all started when, I found that freedom. I knew that it was my purpose to do this.
Going back to your early experiences, at the time when you were doing drugs recreationally and didn't seem like anything, could you tell that bubble was going to burst at any point, or did you feel like you could just continue doing that forever?
Oof. I knew pretty early on that I was going down a bad path. Like once I was like,
Yeah.
Once the Oxycontin came into play, once I actually tried to stop and I couldn't, then the rest of the time I was using drugs for the next like 8 years. It was just masking the fact that I knew that I wasn't able to stop, but I wasn't ready to actually stop yet. And not for lack of trying, not for lack of desire, but I didn't know how. I didn't think that it was actually going to be possible. I just didn't talk about it that much because it was hopeless.
Yeah, there's a quote that says, when you can stop, you don't want to, but when you want to stop, you can't, which I think sums up pretty well a lot of people's experiences with that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
you would say that the call from your friend, which is that what was the moment really that sent you on a big downward path?
You know, I would love to be able to point at that and blame that, but I can't, because I was already, I was drunk when that phone call happened. I was already using drugs. It was just another, we all go through trauma. We all have things happen. And that thing definitely became something that I needed to mask, but there's 100 other things that I've been through that I have to mask also, or had to mask also, right? And that's what was really cool about the freedom that I found. It wasn't just freedom from that event. It wasn't just freedom from drugs. It wasn't just freedom from the cravings and that kind of stuff. It was freedom from a way of thinking about myself, just self-deprecating all the time. Just, I'm incapable of doing anything. I can never trust myself. I can never trust anybody else. I'm never going to amount to anything or anybody. That was constant in my head, because when you are doing this personal development journey, when you're being coached by, I was being coached by world leaders, like people that, you've read their books while I was in my addiction. And if that's the case, and I'm making all these goals with these people that are really powerful people, and then I have something I have to do at 4:00 in order to meet this goal, but I don't have dope. So instead of going and doing that, I go use dope. That's a trauma cycle that continued to happen to me. I'm not able to count on myself. I'm not able to do the things that I set out to do. So it became this, like, it was continual, but it was all me. I can't blame an event. I can't blame anybody else outside of me. I had to take responsibility for every single part of my life, even from before. Like, I was given cocaine by someone that was 22 years old and I was 12 years old, and I had to take responsibility. Like, at what point did it become my choice? So I think it's a really powerful thing for us as humans to take responsibility and not look for one thing that changed everything.
Yeah, for sure. Taking accountability is a really important thing of growing with whatever trauma you have. And I guess trauma can often be a big barrier to seeking help and opening up to people. So how difficult did you find it to open up to with your experiences because of your trauma that you initially probably didn't really want to share?
Yeah, it was actually really hard. I didn't share that with anybody. I used to actually lie about that event. I would share it from somebody else's perspective that was actually there that night when he shot himself. And the first person I ever shared the truth with was a street level heroin dealer. I was just in my car, had him in the car, and for some reason, I'd never met this person before. For some reason, I just told him the story. And it was less than a year later that I found recovery.
Yeah, I guess it's almost more comfortable doing it with someone you don't know, because there's no pressure that you feel like they're going to judge you for the rest of the time that they know you. You can kind of say it and it's out there off your chest. But so what was the pivotal moment for you?
The pivotal moment. There's so many different pivotal moments for someone that's been through addiction and someone that comes out of it. I'd say the real pivotal moment for me was when I had 5 days clean and sober, which was a miracle at the time. I was homeless and, having a hard time. But I had 5 days, and I was at International House of Pancakes with my best friend, Brendan. And he would walk me through this process like the whole time. He wasn't he led the Bible study I went to. He was a church leader, that kind of stuff, but he would like come and pick me up and take me to go get lunch when I was homeless. He would take me to go get coffee when I was homeless and these kind of things, and took me out to breakfast. And, I'm sitting there and I was talking to him. I was all excited about having 5 days. And then I got a text message on my phone, and I opened it up. I had this little flip phone, and it was from my dope dealer. And he was like, "Hey bro, I just got some new stuff. It's fire. I'll give you a free 20 to try out." And right when I read it, I felt something go in through the top of my head, all the way through my body. My toes were tingling, my fingers were tingling, and I lost my peripheral vision. All I could see was the phone, and then my thumbs just started texting back. And it wasn't like King James. It was like, "Ye shall not text me again. Thou hast texted me for the last time." It was going crazy. And then at the end of the text, I felt that thing leave me again, like go out through the top of my head. And I like look at my phone. I was like, "What the heck?" I was like, "That wasn't me." And I showed it to Brendan. I was like, "Dude, that wasn't me. That wasn't me." And he was like, "Okay." And I push send. I close it, and I'm looking down at my pocket as I'm putting it in there. I'm like, "Dude, I don't know what that was." And I look back up, and Jesus is sitting across from me. The entire restaurant had completely disappeared. All I could see was his face. There was a glow coming from behind him. He was smiling, and I immediately knew who it was. I immediately knew what was happening. I felt my face to the table, my hand up. I said, "Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God." Came back up, and he was gone. And I haven't used drugs since.
So do you feel like you've always carried your faith even through your toughest moments, or was it something that you lost and had to refind?
No, I always had it. But there's this really interesting paradox of faith and addiction, because there's how do I explain this? Like I never didn't believe in him. I never like lost my faith in him. I always had this fear of him, like the healthy fear. But none of that was enough for me. And even after that experience happened at IHOP, I believe that he's able to heal instantly. I believe he's able to heal, make cravings go away, make withdrawals go away, and all that. But that was not my experience. I was literally, for the next 20 days, I was shaking, like withdrawing and really, really sick. But the only time I would get relief from all of these withdrawal symptoms was when I was actually sitting down and doing 12-step work, whether I was sitting across from my sponsor and we were doing the work in the mornings, or I was actually sitting down and writing my 4th step out. That was the only relief I was getting. So what I think is great is that, even with my faith, what I had to learn is that it takes work with faith to get stuff done. I always believed, even at the hardest times, that, if I do die, at least I'm going to heaven. That was my thought process. I actually thought that during my addiction a lot, but I think what I found was the real power of that faith, that relationship with God, that makes it so that I believe I am capable of anything now. Like there's nothing holding me back. There's no person that can stop me. There's no thing on this planet that's powerful enough to stop what he has for my life, as long as, right, I do the work. Again, me knowing that, me believing and me having faith in all that doesn't mean anything. I've got to do the work.
So I guess it's a case more of God isn't holding your hand and doing the work for you. It's just lighting the path to show you the way forward.
Yes, and giving me the power. And he does make miracles happen all the time. But I have to be prepared to see them. I have to be prepared to see them and acknowledge them. And, if he puts someone in your life and you hear that intuitive voice that says, talk to this person, you're like, yeah, I don't want to. And you just walk the other way, how can he guide you? But that voice is real. That voice is real.
Yeah, it's like the old story. I feel like my dad used to tell me this, that there was the sailor who was like lost at sea and says, "God, please save me." Then there's a boat that comes and says, "Oh, we'll come help you." And he's like, "No, God will save me, don't worry." And then he lets the ship sail on by, and then another boat comes and says, "Oh, we'll help you." And he's like, "No, God will save me." And then eventually he drowns because his ship sinks, and he's in heaven, and he's like, "God, why did you not save my life?" He's like, "No, I sent you 2 boats to come help you, but you ignored both of them." It's like you kind of have to see what he's doing for you rather than just having blind optimism.
Yes, exactly. And recognizing that, I even believe that things don't happen here without us, right? God doesn't just like make random things happen here without us. And he made us in a way where we're supposed to create, we're supposed to build, we're supposed to work, we're supposed to, find that purpose in our life and go towards it. right? And the more that the closer I get with him, the simpler the steps are that make me feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't have to fight or feel anxious or worried or scared or any of that stuff. That just doesn't exist as long as I'm doing what I believe he would have me do in any moment.
So in terms of like finding your purpose and finding new habits, the role of habits in addiction and recovery is really interesting. So how did you find your understanding of habit formation, and how did that impact your approach to breaking free of your addiction?
Well, um, in my addiction, I had a lot of habits that weren't necessarily great habits. And what I learned actually with neuroscience, a friend of mine is a neurosurgeon, neuroscientist, and she said that addicts actually have, if they can grasp onto it, they actually have a way to form positive habits stronger in the brain than do normal people, because we have neuro highways in our brain. Like when I would wake up, the first thought I would have is dope. Like, how do I get dope? What do I need to do to get dope? And then, I would do whatever it took, that whole wire in my brain, until I got that dopamine rush from that artificial place, right? That was my reward that I was going after. But that highway on the way to that dope hit is always going to be here. It's just I can change the vehicle that I'm taking and what the actual reward is, right? My reward now, dude, there is no comparing. There's no feeling better than when somebody transforms right in front of you. When that light comes on in their eyes, or where you literally recognize somebody have a breakthrough that changes their life right in front of you, or, an addict getting clean in front of, like, I've had somebody like pointing down and like yelling like how God is not real and da 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 da. And like in my recovery work, I don't do, preaching. I don't do evangelism when I'm working with addicts. I just let them find the God of their own understanding. And like, he was sitting there yelling and da 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 da. And then all of a sudden he just like stops and he looks up and he's like, dude, I feel him, puts his hands up like this. And that right there is the dopamine hit, for lack of better terms. But that's what I'm going after now, is as many of those as possible. People meeting God, people finding recovery, and building these things to make more opportunities like that for people to find freedom. That's what I'm going after now. And that's what my brain is wired for. It's either that, and what I found is that it's, for someone like me, it's either progress and consistent like progress, or you start getting really sick. And I don't know where that ends. For me, if I'm digressing, I know that it goes real low. So I've made the conscious choice to continue to do everything I can to progress.
Yeah. So would you say faith is the solution for everybody, or is there a way to recover without having a spiritual awakening?
Yeah. I know a lot of people that have found recovery without the same faith I have, and my purpose and Recovered on Purpose is not a ministry either. I just so happen to know Jesus, and I'm really lucky to have that relationship, right? But I don't go out evangelizing, with Recovered on Purpose. It's totally different. I want addicts and alcoholics to be able to find the freedom from drugs and alcohol. And then I want them to find their own purpose, their own way of living that makes them feel fulfilled, that makes them feel like they are contributing to the world, and help them help addicts. That's the point, right? For me, I couldn't get clean without my faith. I couldn't find recovery without my faith. I don't know how people can find real fulfillment without it. It's really hard to find something sustainable within yourself without some kind of higher cause. That's what purpose is about. I can't create my own purpose without having somebody to hold me to account. I've got to have God there. Like, a huge, vision of mine is that when I die, I'm actually going to see a book of what my potential was, right? And I'm also going to see a bunch of impact that I made that I'll never see here. For instance, if I'm walking around on the streets and I and I stop and talk to someone that's, that has a sign begging for money, and I gave him $5 and I told him my testimony and helped him out, and then never see him again, right? When I die, I'm going to see what impact that made on his life. And who knows, maybe he went on to find recovery and to help like 50,000 people find recovery. And because of that one moment, right, that I'll never know about here, but I'm going to see that someday. And that helps me to understand what purpose really is and what really, what the point is of all this. What's the point?
So in your TED talk, you shared some pretty harrowing stats on relapse rates amongst addicts in the US. So I think it was 40 to 60% of addicts will relapse in the first 30 days and up to 85% in the first year. So what do you think is potentially the cause of this? And are there some sort of societal changes that are in need to help support individuals better through battling addiction and essentially promoting recovery?
Yes. Short answer, yes. There's a lot that has to be done. There's, and I'm in addiction treatment. I help rehabs open. I help market them. I work very specifically with specific types of people that are in it for the right reasons, that are, working on programs that are actually going to help people sustainable recovery. But I think foundationally, the medical system is flawed. I mean, if you can bill somebody and their insurance $60,000 for a month, is your incentive to get them clean forever? If you can bill that same person $60,000 a month once a year, we don't need to go too deep into that right now. But yes, something needs to happen, and something is happening.
Yeah. So for people who have these kind of issues, what are some common factors or triggers that contribute to relapses, and how can people help cope with these kind of challenges?
Well, the number one relapse prevention is going to be finding that purpose, that reason that you're waking up. And the simplest way to find it is, how can you help somebody else every single day? Like, how can you focus on and think about somebody else every single day? The only time that we really get sick and start thinking about relapsing and all this stuff is when we're stuck in ourselves, when we're being selfish, we're thinking about ourselves, we're, poor me, self-pity, self-deprecating conversations about ourselves, like we just want to escape all that. We used to escape with drugs and alcohol. What we have to find is the escape through, not really even the escape, it's just the understanding, okay, well, that's what happens when I get stuck in my thoughts, so why don't I get out of my thoughts and go help someone? And people think that you have to go help, have to go find an addict to go sit down and do the 12 steps with. No, you can go to the grocery store and help that old lady carry your groceries. There's all kinds of different ways that you can stop thinking about yourself and shift the focus to somebody else. Who else can I help? And it's really interesting because that's actually the 10th step of the 12 steps is, we continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. But it's not just that. It's like, when we're having all those thoughts, we can write them out, or we can 10th step them with somebody. We can have a conversation with somebody, but then we resolutely change our thought pattern to somebody that we can help. That's what the solution is. But on top of that, the people that have long, forever recovery, they have some kind of practice in their life where they are helping people for free and for fun. And again, with Recovered on Purpose, that's not my recovery. I don't pretend like Recovered on Purpose is what is keeping me sane, right? I've had hard times while building Recovered on Purpose, while working with Recovered on Purpose, and I had to pause and go look for somebody to help outside of my nonprofit business, because it's still a vocation, right? It's still, I'm not doing it, the same as sitting across from somebody that's homeless, buying them a sandwich and talking to them without wearing my Recovered on Purpose at all. Just being Adam, showing up for someone. Because I'm not Recovered on Purpose. I'm Adam, and I have to remember that in order for my recovery to stay strong, I have to be able to separate myself from everything I'm doing over here and connect with God as Adam and help people. That's where it all comes in. Go to an AA meeting, go to an NA meeting, go to a CA meeting, whatever meetings are in your local community. Reach out to, reach out to Recovered on Purpose. You can message us on Facebook or my website, and we can help you find different communities literally all over the globe. I've helped people in like 15 different countries get introduced to communities in their community for recovery. So, it's getting around people that have been through what you're going through and have come out on the other side. And you do want to get away from the people that are still using as much as possible also, and for people out there that are struggling, I mean, when I was homeless, it wasn't the same. Like they still were on the cusp of getting close to understanding addiction to where they didn't judge you and shame you and all that kind of stuff. We were getting really close to that. But now there's so many resources. I've got a 50 state resource guide on recoveredonpurpose.org solely for Medicaid. I have a Medicaid application for every single state. So this is specifically for people that don't have a bunch of money for treatment, don't have private insurance. You're able to apply for the state Medicaid, and there's like 60 or more resources in every single state. So there's no excuse not to find the resources anymore. It's more about, do you want to make that internal decision to do whatever it takes, and then get around the people that are going to help you do it.
Yeah, for sure. I guess if you're addicted, it's just hard to see out of that tunnel vision, I guess, to reach out and find somebody. And I was gonna say also, there's also, I guess, especially for guys, a lot of stigma around vulnerability and expressing emotion and hardship. How can these barriers be brought down in terms of discussing these kind of issues more for men and encouraging them to seek help rather than try and stick it out by themselves?
Yeah, one thing I have found that I tell, all my sponsees is write it down. Like, you don't have to go into super great detail, but there's something really powerful about taking a pen and writing down whatever it is that you're hiding from everybody and writing it down on paper. Because that doesn't mean that you have to share with anybody, but something happens when you put it into existence out of your head onto paper, and it takes the power away from it. Like, a lot of people, like, they're afraid to share stuff. Like, they're afraid to write it on the 4th step because they're going to have to share it on their 5th step and da-da-da. I'm like, that doesn't mean that you have to share it. Just write it down. And the crazy thing is that once they write it down, they're like, yeah, whatever, I'll share it, because it took the power away. It's no longer this deep, dark secret in your mind. It's on this paper right in front of you. It doesn't have power anymore. So and all this stuff with men sharing and emotions and things like that, like, dude, I get it. That's being lifted right now too, though. I can tell you that it was really hard for me for a long time, but it was more so about the shame than it was about not being able to share with people. It was like I was so ashamed that I had done this, right? And what was really interesting was that I was only met with overwhelming, grace, forgiveness, love. You want to be in an environment where you trust the person that you're sharing with, but 99% of people are going to be trustworthy with, sharing something like that. So that deep, dark secret that I had for almost a decade is now my opening story to help people. I've reached millions of people with that story now.
Just addiction is just a way of trying to get at something else external that you can't quite reach it, I guess. It's just, you end up a bit like a rat in a maze. So you end up in like a hole of temporary relief. So you end up in a trap almost that you've set up for yourself. So I guess it's a case of trying to work your way back out the way you came almost. I imagine it's quite rewarding now doing what you're doing with Recovered on Purpose. What does your average day look like now? And what do you enjoy most about it?
Well, what I enjoy the most about it is that I still get to learn a lot while I'm doing this. Like right now, I'm, like I said, I'm working with different treatment centers and things for the for-profit side. And then everything I'm learning over there from marketing, I get to bring it over to Recovered on Purpose. Everything I've done with Recovered on Purpose, I get to bring it over to help treatment centers. And on the day to day, I literally just work every day. I love what I do. It doesn't feel like work. I get to, make videos and write content and help and coach people and consult people for marketing, consult people for opening rehabs. I get to do all these things centered around this ultimate purpose that I have of helping addicts, and that's why, my favorite part of it is just that my entire life is centered around this ultimate purpose that I have. And, I've wanted to do this, and I've been doing it now for like 4 or 5 years, where my, all of my free time goes into helping addicts. So, like I said, that's the new dope rush for me. That feeling of when somebody messages you and says that they're clean because of some video you posted, or they tell you that, they saw you on a video podcast, and they decided to get clean that day, and now they're celebrating 90 days. Those kinds of things, like you can't get that anywhere else, where somebody's life changed just because you were ultimately doing what you love to do. Like that's what I get to do now.
Looking ahead now, what are your aspirations for Recovered on Purpose in the future?
Yeah, with Recovered on Purpose specifically, I'm about to make my course Recovery Speaker. I'm about to put it on the website, making it completely free, where everybody can access it to learn how to share their stories, learn how to write books, all that, and create a peer recovery coaching model that isn't, it's not medical or anything. It's just we're helping each other share our stories, right? And I see Recovered on Purpose continuing to reach more and more and more people, and connect more and more and more people to the resources they need to find recovery. I don't put numbers on it or anything because, there's just no point. When you have numbers, I mean, I've had months where I've reached 50 million people organically with social media posts and things like that. And I can tell you that didn't necessarily correlate exactly to an amount of people that I was able to talk to and help. But I've watched, the amount of people I've been able to talk to and personally help and things like that. I want to make it so that other people can do what I'm doing when I die. Like when I die, I want this to live on to where there's a system built where addicts are helping each other, sharing our stories, and, whatever modalities are out there to help us find recovery. Also, I'm a believer in medication assisted treatment, in 12 steps, in, just walking into a church and finding recovery. I'm a proponent of every single way that somebody can find recovery. And what I see Recovered on Purpose doing is being the conduit of a message that helps the right people get connected with the right resources to help them get clean.
And for those looking for help with these kind of issues, can you direct them to any resources?
Yeah, you can go to recoveredonpurpose.org. You can find us on Facebook, Recovered on Purpose. If you're in the States, again, I have a 50-state resource guide, and on each page, you can actually reach out directly to me and my team of resource managers so that we can help find the exact place that you want to go. And we'll help you get the Medicaid you need, or, we'll find whatever it is that you need. We'll help you.
And those links will be in the description and the show notes. Adam, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thanks for coming on. Keep doing what you do.
Thank you. Thank you, brother. Thank you.